When Chen Ping'an was about to run out of the yard, the girl in black suddenly shouted, "Wait, I have something to tell you." Chen Ping'an pretended not to hear it. When she was about to open the courtyard, the girl raised her voice, "Chen Ping'an." Chen Ping'an had to turn around and ran back to the threshold. Her face was a little ruddy than before, but her voice was still a little hoarse, saying, "First, although we outsiders are stronger than ordinary people, as you said before, we are no different from you. Second, outsiders can kill here. Once we violate it, we will be expelled for no reason. We are doomed to get nothing. The price is too high to exceed your imagination. Third, you can kill here if you want to be clear. Even if we outsiders fight empty-handed at a critical moment, we will certainly do it after all. It is the most fundamental thing to have a life to live." Chen Ping'an thought for a moment and asked, "Do you mean to do things quickly?" The girl in black grinned. Her lighted face and shining eyes seemed to brighten the whole room. She patted the green scabbard across her knee, nodded and said, "Yes, you should show quickly, faster, or even the fastest. For example, I wear a knife and a sword. I should be the fastest person in the world, whether drawing a knife or drawing a sword." She paused and suddenly changed from an impassioned female seer from afar to a girl next door who wanted to show off. She narrowed her eyes and asked, "Hey, do you know how many there are in this world?" Chen Ping'an looked blankly. The young girl seemed to see that the young man was not interested. Suddenly, she was insipid and waved to rush people. "It's best to buy the jar back. I'm waiting to drink medicine." Chen Ping'an's pace of leaving the yard this time was slower and more stable. Not long after he left the mud bottle lane, the unlocked courtyard door was gently pushed open. The girl in black opened her eyes. She just breathed in a strange way and looked at the door like a grey enemy. The flying sword in the snow-white scabbard on the table was suddenly silent, but there was an air of killing, as if it was cold in the late spring. The maidservant Jigui walked to the door leisurely, just like a neighbor who usually walks through the door. She didn't cross the threshold, peep into the house, and look around. Instead, she turned a blind eye to the girl in black with a horizontal knife on her knee on a small bedboard. After looking at him for a long time, Jigui finally saw the living man with an innocent face. "Sister, who are you? Why are you sitting on Chen Ping'an's bed? I haven't heard that he has distant relatives." Ning Yao looked at the uninvited girl and closed his eyes. When Jigui saw that she pretended to be deaf and dumb, she was not angry. She just shook her head gently, turned her mouth and looked disgusted. She looked at the long snow-white sword with a scabbard on the table dart in the depths of her eyes. There was a deep hatred and fear, and there was a faint golden silk thread swimming wildly in her pupils. The maid hesitated, but she still raised one foot to cross the threshold, suddenly retracted her foot, coughed and pretended, "I came in. I don't object if I don't speak, right? Also, this is Chen Ping'an's house. I've known him for many years. You can't understand what I said. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we don't have anything to talk about. I just came to see if there's anything missing here. We'll move away soon. Many items can be left to Chen Ping'an. Don't you? Yes. He has had a hard time these years, nagging and reciting." She and Chen Ping'an are very much like young girls. After the maid Jigui entered the house, it was calmed down. She went straight to the small table and sat on the stool. The rest of her eyes kept spinning on the sword. At the same time, the girl in black also took out the 3 pieces of paper left by the young Taoist to Chen Ping'an, watched carefully, and tried to figure out a way. Unfortunately, she turned it over and looked at it carefully twice, but she still couldn't find a way. She was disappointed and said, "These words really don't have taste." She clearly remembered that on the long wall in her hometown, there were 18 words intermittently, all engraved with swords, and each word contained the majestic momentum of suppressing 10,000 demons. When she was a child, her greatest hobby was to stand in a stroke of those big characters and look up. Therefore, the girl really despises the towns for character plague angry bullfight. The maid Jigui turned around, quietly straightened her slender waist and folded her hands on her knees. She tried to make herself more like a lady in a big family. Facing the girl in black, she smiled and said softly, Alas, girl, you are too careless. Ning Yao couldn't help asking. Who are you? Zhigui said, touching his chest and pretending to be surprised. Girl, you can speak our dialect. Ning Yao asked again. What are you doing? Zhigui stretched out his finger and pointed to the long sword on the table. Yours. Ning Yao frowned and said nothing. The girl in black didn't speak, and Zhigui didn't care. She stood up and went to the corner of the wall and looked at the bottles and cans on the wooden frame. The maid looked very carefully at those worthless possessions. When he was a kill worker apprentice, Chen Ping'an walked barefoot through all the mountains and rivers around the town. He went to the mountains to dig soil, cut firewood, and ran quickly up and down the mountains as long as others were willing to teach him something, whether it was elementary or obscure. Chen Ping'an would spend 12 minutes to do it. As for what degree he could do in the end, Chen Ping'an didn't care. Of course, he wanted to care, it doesn't matter. Just as old man Yang taught him porcelain making skills, he was always picky and never willing to take out the real unique skill of pressing the bottom of the box. However, as long as old man Yao spoke and did it, Chen Ping'an would do it very seriously. Later, Liu Xiaoyan taught him to make wooden bows and fishing rods, and Chen Ping'an also learned it meticulously. Song Jingson next door always spoke harshly about Chen Ping'an's habit. According to the book, it's called doing everything to listen to fate. Unfortunately, Chen Ping'an has no good life at all. In that case, it's better to eat and die, and break the broken part. Zhigui waved her hand, smiled brightly, and said, Let's go. Girl, take good care of your injury. Shout when you need it. My name is Zhigui, and I live in the yard next door. Ning Yao's face was expressionless. The maid left the house and went to the yard, with a voice that the girl in black could just hear in the house. She muttered, It's not much good looking. Ning Yao also said softly, Intentionally or unintentionally, this name is really tacky. When Zhigui closed the gate of the courtyard, he made some force and banged. Ning Yao closed his eyes again. The strange girl's visit. Ning Yao's heart has no waves. However, she really doesn't like this town, especially the practitioners who come here to seek opportunities. They're intriguing. Fly and dog. They say they're immortal experts. They just stand on the mountain. Not how tall they are. In the heart of young girl Ning Yao, the avenue should not be so small. After the straw sandal boy walked out of the mud bottle lane, the sun was a little dazzling. Stretched out his right hand to cover his forehead and gently exhaled. Then he began to jog. He walked briskly. Even though he had walked through the streets many times, he was still not tired. After all, for the young people who were used to going up the mountain and into the water, this journey was really not worth mentioning. What was really hard was going up the mountain to burn charcoal. A dragon kiln needed 20 or 30,000 kilograms of charcoal every year, especially when it was raining heavily. It was really hard to live on the mountain to cut firewood and burn charcoal. It's a kind of suffering. The young man once almost died in a collapsed carbon kiln. What the young man has done over the years is almost physical work and some skills. But after he started, he leads purely by strength. Therefore, the young man's appearance of being thin and weak is just an illusion, and he has an inner strength after being tempered. Chen Ping'an stopped at the entrance of a cross alley, leaned back against the wall, squatted down, always clenched his fist in one hand and fastened his straw sandals in the other. At this moment, the young man was calm. I just miss my only friend in town. That guy once showed off with Chen Ping'an mysteriously. He said that his grandfather told a story. When his grandfather was a child, he saw someone standing by the river. He just trotted a few steps and jumped over the whole stream. Later, Liu Xiaoyan and Chen Ping'an went to try by themselves and chose the narrowest section of the stream. They retreated and ran up at the same time and took off at the same time. The result was several times larger than Chen Ping'an after jumping. Liu Xiaoyan quickly fell into the water. Then he found a dark shadow on his head. Swish! He continued to move forward and finally fell far away. After that, Liu Xiaoyan never mentioned the immortal who crossed the river in one step. After that, Liu Xiaoyan knew that Chen Ping'an would often go to the stream, run up, take off, leap and fall. The boy approached the other side more and more, and enjoyed it. Once, Liu Xiaoyan couldn't help looking away secretly. When he saw the shocking behind the scenes, he felt that the dark boy at that time seemed different from the fool in his impression. When the boy leapt over the stream, he was like a snake hawk that often hovered in the sky of the town. Fu Nanhua saw that Cai Jinjian was a little depressed, so he took her around casually. They walked side by side and took it as a distraction. During this period, Cai Jinjian was mixed with some anecdotes about the set of Dongbao Pingshu. Cai Jinjian still forced a smile, but she was in a much better mood than the irritability after leaving the mud bottle lane. She is getting better and better impression of this noble child of the old Dragon City. You should know that although the old Dragon City has a deep heritage and a large number of talents, it is only a line away from the top set. It is reasonable to say that Xianxia Mountain, which is at the bottom of the second class, is much higher. But the orthodox immortal families like Xianxia Mountain, which have an orderly inheritance and are rooted in Mianghang, have a strong impression on the isolated southern barbarians like the old Dragon City. He has an innate sense of superiority. If you met him in the past, he would be well cultivated without whispering behind his back. Cai Jinjian said bitterly, "Brother Fu, your Daoyang Stone is the life root of Xianxia Mountain. Since I have agreed in advance, I will not default. Even if I lose my family, I will repay Brother Fu." Fu Nanhua comforted. It's hard to say whether the chance of Gu Ken's family is a certain situation at present. Cai Jinjian looked gloomy and shook her head. Liu Shimao, the true king of the river, declared that he was in a mess and that his means were not weak. Otherwise, he could not have a place in Shijian Lake. This opportunity could not be forced. Once I annoyed Liu Shimao, how can I carry the power of a great immortal from the side door? I'm afraid I'll be hated by Liu Shimao. God knows what Liu Shimao will do if I leave the town without the saints and rules aggressive behavior. I think Brother Fu must have seen some clues on the border. The bodyguard who came here with me on this treasure hunt at the mountain gate is not strong enough and is not his opponent at all. Fu Nanhua said with a smile, "Don't worry. Even for the 10 cloud root stones, my old Dragon City will escort you back to Xianxia Mountain safely." Cai Jinjian turned his head and smiled at him with a deep feeling. Fu Nanhua was quite complacent. He habitually wanted to touch the jade pendant. After touching it, he remembered that his old longbow rain pendant had been given to the boy named Shuang Jixen. Cai Jinjian breathed a sigh of relief. As she walked, her steps tilted slightly to the left, so her shoulder gently touched Fu Nanhua. Cai Jinjian made an unscheduled bet on the trip to the mud bottle lane, which was a temporary intention, but she also weighed it carefully. However, the facts proved that she lost the bet at the cost of 10 priceless Yan'an stones, which filled her with anxiety for the next trip to the small town. She also had a sense of dependence on Fu Nanhua. Were a gambler's heart, 10 Yan'an stones were gambling, and 5 $10 is not the same as gambling. If you win the bet, you'll make a pot full of profits, and you'll lose the bet. Cai Jinjian thinks she won't lose. Absolutely not. She's Cai Jinjian, the first person in Xianxia Mountain's cultivation talent. On the road of cultivation, everything is smooth. The realm is improved, and the momentum is like breaking bamboo. Cai Jinjian doesn't believe that she will capsize in this smelly dish. While Cai Jinjian's mood improved, Fu Nanhua, who felt that the overall situation had been set, also had a leisurely mood to really appreciate Cai Xiangzi's appearance and figure. It is undeniable that she is a naturally attractive woman. When she becomes a Taoist partner with this woman and gets along day and night, she can get better in practice and bed. Cai Jinjian was once praised as Cloud Rule Mountain Wind, flying pasture by a respected senior leader. In fact, the implication is that it is a very rare candidate for Taoist partners. Xianxia ancestors, who rely on mountains and are used to doing business, have cultivated Cai Jinjian at all costs these years. They have no selfishness for sale. The heaven-made marriage of the immortal family should be more cautious and take a longer-term view than the marriage of the secular King Chao half-elf. It's just that Fu Nanhua really doesn't like Xianxia Mountain. It's not like to put the fate of the mountain gate on Cai Jinjian's shoulder. This is also the reason why Fu Nanhua has a poor view of Xianxia Mountain. Fu Nanhua reminded, if the young man next door to Song Jixin, who is also the selected person of a certain force outside, still keeps the porcelain with its real name, you will cause trouble this time. It's easy to be followed by people and find Xianxia Mountain and you. Moreover, Song Jixin's master servant and intercepting Zhang Shenzhen Liu Shimao may be aware of it. Sai Zhenjian smiled. Brother Fu may have focused on opportunities and clues, and never cared about some unwritten rules here. If a boy born in the town, at the age of 9, can be taken away from the town by the porcelain bear, who has been waiting for nearly 10 years, it means that his born talent is not innate and is not very valuable. The older he gets, the cheaper he will be. Those sectarian gangs will spend a lot of money instead the price of adoption money. To be the head of grievances is obviously far less affordable than spending a lot of money to cultivate a few pro-offspring. As soon as Sai Jinjian mentioned the straw sandal boy, he was filled with disgust. Ordinary people should have ordinary people's consciousness. Fu Nanhua tried his best to be careful in his words and persuaded him. Reason is this reason. But the young man has little knowledge. He doesn't know that you are the noble fairy Cai of Xianxia Mountain. It's an OFFENCE. It's enough to teach a lesson. Why do you need to do it twice? Fu Nanhua felt that Sai Jinjian's bold move might have something to do with the chance. So he wanted to say something to see if he could find some clues. In order to avoid the mentors catching the cicada and the yellow finch, he thought she was the autumn cicada. In fact, she was the yellow finch. Lao Longcheng has gone through a lot of hardships, and his offer is far more boastful than Jian Mountain and Xianxia Mountain Zhang's price. Only a few bits and pieces of secret information. Fu Nanhua was able to know that the so-called opportunity in the town for 3,000 years, after the tragic war, in addition to the group of gifted children in the town, has really been only the magic weapon left here by the ancestors of the previous generation. But when this blessed land is facing complete collapse, it's not that simple. In the last dynasty, mountains and rivers were broken, and divine weapons must be born to welcome the new king. Sai Junjian was a little depressed. Don't mention him. It's disgusting to think of him. She then showed a touch of rare hostility in her long autumn eyes. But she didn't want to damage her fairy image in Fu Nanhua's mind, so she didn't appeal to her heart. If she meets that young bitch outside the town in the future, she must let him die happily, not just drag a sick body and continue to live for more than 10 or 20 years. Tall women especially hate the eyes of teenagers. Deep in her heart, she has an obsession she has never thought about. With that clean look in her eyes, she has been practicing in Xianxia Mountain, which is famous for its no dirt and clarity. She hasn't seen it several times from beginning to end for so many years. What qualifications do poor teenagers growing up in poor alleys have to have this beauty day after day and year after year? Sai Zhenjian tilted her head and rubbed her eyelids, which made her distant mountain eyebrows more and more slender. Fu Nanhua, who has been looking around, joked casually. There is a widely spread saying in our Jingfan in Lao Longkeng, which is called left-eye jumping wealth and right-eye jumping disaster. Are you left-eye jumping or right-eye jumping? Sai Zhenjian's fingers were hot and squeezed back, staring at him. She was obviously jumping on her right eyelid. Fu Nanhua, who asked for trouble from himself, quickly mended his mistakes and said with a smile, "The blind attention of ordinary people can't be true." Sai Zhenjian tilted his mouth, turned sideways, stared at Fu Nanhua's side face, and said triumphantly, "Have you been cheated?" Fu Nanhua was stunned, looking at his little daughter's charming and naive Sai Zhenjian. He was a little excited for no reason. He suddenly hesitated and began to waver about her killing heart. Would it be more conducive to the plan of the old Dragon City forces to go north with her? Once Sai Zhenjian successfully gets the chance here, when she returns to the mountain gate, her status is bound to rise, and she will operate properly. It is not even that she has no chance to become the hostess of Xianxia Mountain, which is also in the ancestral spectrum of Xianxia Mountain with a long history. Yet, as note that there is no precedent for a woman to run the family. In this way, the old Dragon City has a springboard to penetrate the hinterland of Dongbao Pingshu. From then on, the north and south echo, advance, attack and retreat. It is one BAS foundation that makes the old Dragon City get rid of the embarrassing situation of empty strength, but only partial security. It has suffered from exclusion for hundreds of years. Not far ahead, a few steps away, is the intersection of two lanes. Funan suddenly woke up when he saw the fog, as if he had realized something, and his eyes were firm again. Funan, wearing a high crown, instantly exuded fine beads of sweat on his forehead. Those who disturb my mind will be killed to strengthen my heart. At this moment, Funan looked at Xianxia again. His eyes, air and state of mind were free and easy again. Thought it was just like appreciating a picture. You can raise your eyes with beautiful scenery. Now you can see more than a few eyes. After all, after she left the town, she was destined to kill the clouds in his hands, kill and set fire to gold belts, build roads and bridges without burns. Listen to some famous aphorisms at the bottom of the city well. They are true all over the world. Funan's mind suddenly opened up. Jian, with a soft voice and a smile, asked, Nanhua, what do you think of? So happy. She quietly changed a more intimate name. Funan shook his head and smiled out as he was about to speak. He caught a glimpse of a dark shadow from the corner of his eye. A thin young man seemed to cross the horizontal lane in front of Xianxia in one step. His left hand picked up rapidly. At the same time, a punch from his right hand had hit the abdomen of the fairy in Xianxia mountain. The momentum was strong and heavy. The sudden force between the sizes made a faint whistling sound, forcing the woman to bend down and lower her head. Although the young man's right hand is much stronger than his peers, the young man is actually left-handed. So the sharp weapon held by the young man's left hand completely disappeared into Xianxia's throat and directly pierced his lower mouth. The young man still didn't stop. He hit the woman's chest with his right hand, and his left hand was still lifted up to make sure there is no accident in this sneak attack. At that moment, blood gushed from the woman's slender white neck. Then, the boy made a force on his waist and ankle, hit the tall woman's heart with his shoulder, and smashed his whole person into the transverse alley. Funan rooted his feet on the ground and stood still. The old Dragon City young master has a blank mind. Funan regained his mind and looked around. He didn't even let go of the roof of the alley. He didn't notice anything strange. He took a quick and deep breath, neither stepping forward nor retreating. He subconsciously grabbed the ancestral jade pendant again. After he failed, he quickly recited a fragmented Taoist formula. This formula is not a magic power, but to help him calm down and condense chi. If his state of mind is like a boat across the lake, the function of this formula is a boat anchor. He began to turn his back to a wall and walk sideways to the fork of two alleys. His muscles were tight and made a defensive posture. He didn't dare to take it lightly. He stared at the alley in his sight. The straw sandal boy stood next to Xianxia's body in a pool of blood. The boy bowed slightly and maintained a subtle offensive posture. He also stared at Funan. The two sides confront each other, one for solving doubts and the other for survival. Xianxia should be the only cargo for teenagers born in the sky. For the emergence of Funan, the posture shown by the teenagers in the poor lane by instinct is more a meaning that you don't commit me and I don't commit me. Funan asked a very superfluous question. Did you kill her? The young man kept silent and always held the murder weapon in his hand. It was a piece of broken porcelain, slightly smaller than his palm. The part of his fist was extremely sharp. The young man's hands were dripping with blood. I don't know whether it was Xianxia's blood or the result of porcelain piercing his palm, which fell on the ground of the alley. Funan felt both absurd and relieved after he determined that there was no one else around. Finally, he cast his eyes on Xianxia's delicate body. Even this despicable scene still did not damage her natural beauty. Her graceful, plump chest fluctuated slightly. Scarlet blood gushed from her neck and mouth, and her vitality was about to be completely cut off. However, her strong body tempered by the Chen machine would make her suffer more heavy and long than ordinary people. Funan had a smile on his face, but with a severe chill in his bones. He asked, why do you want to kill her? You have no grievances with this sister. Is it because she joked with you in the mud bottle lane that you want to kill? When was the town so lawless? Do you know that it's the same everywhere to kill for life and pay off debts? The boy is like a mute. Silent. Fu Nanhua didn't care what the young man thought and began to move forward slowly with firm steps. He knows that Xianxia is dead. This is no Xianxia mountain, a fairy cave surrounded by immortals. This is a cage of heaven forbidden by magic. Unless there is a land fairy or a golden arhat who is willing to exchange most of her accomplishments for her life, it is possible to suppress her soul and help her come back from the dead. It's a pity that Xianxia will never have such a great fortune. The sage in the town has a heavy responsibility and overlooks the common people. He will never favor one over the other, but will follow the trend on the road of cultivation. He died inexplicably on Yangwan Avenue or on a single wooden bridge competing for a chance. Although it's not too much, it's definitely not rare. If the preacher can live a long life, do everything step by step, avoid disasters and misfortunes, and enjoy benefits without taking risks, then the worry-free immortal in the eyes of the common people seems to be too worthless. Therefore, Fu Nanhua even made the worst preparations for fighting in the town. However, in the town, under the eyes of a saint, he saw the temporary allies walking side by side, which were killed in a flash of lightning. The old mayor of Longcheng was the first time in the world, and there was no dazzling magic weapon to attack. Without the earth-shaking immortal family's pen, just kill the most humble country mudleg. Fu Nanhua was short and could not accept this absurd fact at all. If it weren't for this small town, the grass shoe boy, a little man whose life is as cheap as wild grass. Even if he saw Xianxia in Xianxia mountain from a distance, it would be unreachable. Fu Nanhua looked solemn and said in a deep voice, "Although I didn't have time to save Xianxia, I couldn't kill you and avenge Xianxia. Since I saw you commit the murder with my own eyes and didn't do anything, once it came out, the gold-lettered signboard of Old Dragon City would be smashed. Therefore, I shall teach you a lesson that's for how to deal with Xianxia Mountain and how to give Xianxia justice. That's your business." These high-sounding words of the young master of the Old Dragon City are meant to be heard by the saints here. They are polite words, so that they won't look too ugly after eating, which will cause the saints bad feeling. There is also a possibility that Fu Nanhua will listen to the old ancestors of Xianxia Mountain in the future. Fu Nanhua is nothing more than a man of utmost benevolence and righteousness on the table. Otherwise, Fu Nanhua has long had the ideal of killing Xianxia. I really want to reward the young man in front of me. He made mistakes and acted recklessly, which saved him a lot of trouble. He is really a lucky general of his own, Fu Nanhua said as he moved forward. Seeing your way of killing just now means that you're smelly. Skinbag has much more explosive power than ordinary young men. In fact, it is quite rare if there were no today's storm. As long as you had the opportunity to join the army, dare to kill and fight, and some chance coincidence, you won the favor of a military family leader and the military general of the battlefield family, and gave you a military family formula casting method. After a long time, you may not have a new world in 20 or 30 years. As Fu Nanhua walked forward, the boy began to step back slowly and face the Old Dragon City young master with high crown and big sleeves. Fu Nanhua, with a slender figure, walks in the alley with a jade tree facing the wind. He has a natural temperament of wealth and grace. Fu Nanhua stretched out a hand, put his palm down, hung it on his waist, and said with a smile, "It's a pity your life is not very good. Otherwise, according to my statement, you will have the opportunity to achieve such a high achievement. It single quote says impossible." Fu Nanhua was amused by his joke and smiled more. When he took a step forward, his foot suddenly hung in the air half a foot away from the ground. Sorry, it's so tall. It's hard for Fu Nanhua to be unhappy. After entering the town, he first traded with Song Jixen, a teenager in Naiping Lane. The profits were huge, far exceeding expectations. Then there was Xianxia, who was probably blocked by his own road. He died suddenly in front of him. He could not only keep his hand clean and free from blood, but also get 2 bags of gold and copper coins on her for nothing. Maybe he could find 1 or 2 secret treasures of Xianxia Mountain. Even if they were not the treasures of the town, he would not be far away. He didn't believe that Xianxia had no amulet. For example, Funan Hua. In addition to the old Longbu Yupai, which is just a cover-up, he also carries the small things with excellent appearance and high grade, which is almost the treasure at the bottom of the box of the old Longchang. Therefore, among the unorthodox friars, there is a popular saying, if you collect the corpse for someone, you will get a good reward. When Funan Hua passed Xianxia's body, he didn't even look at her. On the contrary, he was in a state of inexplicable excitement. One step forward and one step back. The two are always more than 10 steps away. Funan Hua just needs to make sure that the teenager can get out of the alley. When he wants to catch a teenager born and raised here, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. Besides, the worn corpse behind him is a warning. Once the teenager is given enough breathing opportunities, the surprise may hit him on the head. Funan Hua seems to be catching mice with a cat, but he is actually adjusting his body rhythm after all. After he officially set foot in practice at the age of 9, he has never had a chance to win or lose purely by close combat. Of course, he doesn't have to separate life and death from the young man, which will make his gains outweigh the losses. Together with Xianxia, there are two readily available opportunities. But we must make this unexpected young man lie in bed in the near future and don't give the young man the possibility of a morph. Funan Hua suddenly smiled and asked, by the way, what's your name? Given a relevant answer to the young, as like as to peace in the face, with the hands of the young, and the dark faces are full of rustic grass. Yuan she may not know. I have a good eye, so when you talk to me in the mud lane, you look at her, as you see me now. Funan Hua was stunned. Now he was really impressed with the young man. Tut said with a smile. It's a little interesting. It's a little interesting. Funan Hua's words and deeds seem light, but in fact, he has been paying attention to the boy's left hand and is still dripping blood. This shows that the young man's strength has not been relaxed. I'm afraid ordinary people can't handle the biting pain long ago. At this time, Funan Hua felt that the casual comment of pity was really right. Funan Hua thought the time was almost right and asked the last question he was interested in. You killed her so decisively. Someone must have tipped you off. I'm not curious about his identity. What I can figure out is how you, a child who grew up here, crossed the barrier in your heart so quickly and killed so well. Feel at ease. Do you understand this statement? You know, even if I kill for the first time, wait until the excitement when the end faded. The whole person began to tremble. It was better to read the meditation formula for a long time. It's not like you. It's like eating and drinking water. It's unreasonable. The boy, who had been expressionless all the time, suddenly showed his frightened eyes and panicked face. He looked straight behind Funan Hua, as if he were the tall woman who died and came back to life. When Funan Hua subconsciously turned his head and half his neck, his heart was short. When he returned to the past, because of the great height difference, Funan Hua had been in front and no line of sight, but there was no trace of a teenager. At a critical juncture. Original. After making that look and face, in an instant, the straw sandal boy did not hesitate to start a sprint. After 3 steps, his left foot suddenly made a force, and the whole person jumped up high. Finally, his right foot stepped on the wall on one side of the alley. After the rapid ejection turn, the boy raised his left hand towards the tall man. The boy is really like a snake eagle.